r/AskReddit by Reddify. People who lie on their resumes. What's your greatest achievement? I'm an architect. And I lied on my resume and said I was excellent at using a certain BIM software. I did know how to use it, but only for the basics. I figured with normal use and with my knowledge of other similar software I would pick up the rest. Turns out part of my job was going to be training one of the firm's directors with how to use this BIM software. I had a month before I was going to start working for the new firm. So I spent all my free time, that entire month, doing a ton of tutorials to learn enough so that I could teach this director. Turned out the director is completely computer illiterate. He was still drawing his plans and sections by hand and then having a tech draw them up in AutoCAD. He got frustrated and quit trying to learn the software, not the firm, after a few lessons. And I managed to get away with that lie. Yours was saved. Except for the month spent dedicated to learning the software. At a former job in a chemistry lab, someone applied, saying they had 13 years of experience using certain analytical method. The person who developed the analysis had done so 3 years prior and was on the interview committee. Ouch. 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 I would have loved to see the reactions on all sides in that room. I've seen it the other way around with employers asking for 5+ years experience with Windows Server 2012 R2. Fake it till you make it. Or just add on experiences from defunct companies that can't be confirmed. Chief Technical Officer, Blockbuster Video, Accounting Manager, New York Division, Enron, Regional Manager, Scranton Branch, Borders, Death Camp Overseer, Nazi Party 1941, 1945. Wait, I'm not sure I've got the hang of this. Now you have the right style. Just specify a bit more. I did a phone interview at a company I'd interned at. One of the VPs wanted to know what my writing experience was like. I told her not to worry. I had worked for the college newspaper for 2 years. She offered me a job the next day. I managed the advertisements and never submitted anything to be published. It was a friggin' sales job anyway. Get out of here with that question. Someone asked me for a writing sample. I sent them a report that I actually did prepare. But it was a template that wasn't developed by me. Worked to, got the job. I was asked for a writing sample, but I'd thrown my coursework out during a move. I got a paper from my mate and emailed it in. Next interview I was complimented on the work and offered the job. I've been a journalist and editor for the last 16 years. I failed basic English at school. Not a lie. Time Magazine's Person of the Year 2006. Food for thought. One day there will no longer be a living Time Magazine's 2006 Person of the Year. Are you threatening sound barrier? Hard worker. Attention to detail. I want to work here. Attention to detail. I escaped my country on a boat. This dude claimed he was a mechanic to get to go for free. When the engine broke down at sea, he was found out. Luckily we eventually made it. And nobody died. Edit. Thank you for the gold. I'll add some details about the trip when I get home. This was in the early 80s when I was 14. So I only remember bits and pieces. It was a longest journey though. It took us 100 days from Da Nang, Vietnam to Hong Kong. Sorry to disappoint. But no cannibalism. Edit 2. Sorry for the disjointed stories. But it's what I can remember. Sorry for the format too. I really tried to make it easier to read. On Wednesday the 22nd of September 1982 a friend of my uncle came by my house and said the trip was on. The nature of these things was that you put the words out to trusted family connections. Then you waited. You didn't know when or if it ever happened. We were told to pretend to be manual laborers and dressed accordingly. My uncle took me on his moped to the meeting place. I was left there. That afternoon a whole bunch of us strangers worked to transfer gravels from one boat to another. Nobody knew who was in on the trip. We did whatever we were told to do. By nightfall, we were told if anyone wanted to go home, then got on this boat. If not, got on the other boat. I got on the other boat. Remember this was Vietnam in the 80s. Electricity was scarce. Once it got dark, it was dark. We were inside a bay. We had to go through the opening of the bay to get to the open sea. While still inside the bay, the captain met up with a rowboat that carried 6 more people, 3 members of a family plus the captain's wife and his 2 little girls. Later we learned that that family had a side deal with the captain to take his family out to meet with our boat, and they got to go for free. Sometime during the night, seasickness hit, and I was out. The next day, I threw up again and again like there was no tomorrow. If I woke up, I threw up. This older guy named Dan took a pity on me and gave me a seasickness pill. It must be during the second night that the engine broke. Some people tried successfully to repair it. There were a lot hand cranking on the engine in the hope of getting it to start. We started to get panic. We made torches and waved them around in the SOS motions hoping that someone saw it. We drifted in the open sea for a day or so. Then we saw land and what looked like shrubs. It didn't look far. Everybody took up a plank and tried to row the boat towards it. After a while, we could tell we didn't make any progress and just stopped rowing. At some point, I started bawling like a little girl. It must be on Saturday when we saw a big ship heading towards us. At this point, it would be okay if it was the Vietnamese Coast Guard. The ship got to about a few hundred yards from us and stopped there. From the flag, we knew it was the Chinese. We could also see a few white sailors on it too. We thought they must be Russians. We all yelled and waved to the ship. After a while, the ship turned around and headed back to land. Just like that. No attempts to communicate or do anything for us or to us. Hope was lost again. It also fired its cannon once. Not at us, of course. To this day, I still don't know why they did that. Late that afternoon we saw someone approaching us again. This time, it was a small fishing boat. It got much closer to our boat this time. Again, a lot of yelling and waving. Then this guy named Tam jumped in the water and swam towards the fishing boat. It turned out someone said if one of us could get on the fishing boat, then it couldn't leave us. They threw him a rope and pulled in on board. The problem was Tam didn't speak Chinese. So he got on his knees and bowed up and down to the fisherman. Another man in our boat, named Keats, said he could speak Cantonese. Someone had a bright idea and pushed him in the water, thinking he could swim to the fishing boat like Tam. The problem was he couldn't swim. He was pulled back into our boat. After a bit of negotiation, it was agreed that they would tow us to land for 2 gold rings. They threw us a rope, so we didn't drift away. They went on and had their dinner and waited for nightfall. It took what seemed like hours for them to tow us to land. We all got scared when they cut the rope. We thought we were scammed. But then someone dipped a pole into the water, and the water was only chest high. We were saved. We reached Hainan Island. If you look at the map, this is that huge island south of China and east of Vietnam. The next morning words got out, and the locals swarmed around us and wanted to trade. I remember kids not older than 10 years old seemingly all had a pack of cigarettes on them. We stayed there 2-3 days and paid to have our boat repaired. After that, we had to make a decision. We could go east to the open sea again and hopefully got to Hong Kong in 3-4 days, or we could go clockwise around the island and got to Hong Kong whenever we got there. And so the second option we chose. At this point, we also knew that the Chinese government wouldn't return us to Vietnam. From then on, we took our sweet time and went for as long as weather permit. We always stayed close to land. We begged for food whenever we stopped at a new place. The day we had to cross over from Hainan Island to the mainland China were full of nerve. It turned out to be a nice, calm day. We were so happy to reach that peninsula across from the island. That evening, we reached a big city. A lot of fishing boats around. At this point, we all were pretty good at begging for food. This guy named Gok waded in chest high water and brought back good food for a few of us. I forgot something. Before we arrived at the port of this big city, we approached a shipping ship that sailed under the Panama flag. We were given some food and some oil. We stayed in this city for a few days. I don't remember why. The local officials kept us in a basement of a hotel with a guard and all. We were fed quite nicely. We were told to stay put. But we were a bit brazen at this point. Some of us sneaked out, sold our gold, and bought stuff. At some point, I was given an old and ragged army jacket. I was wandering around this city bare feet wearing this jacket when the cops must have thought I was a deserter or something. They shocked me with their batons that could send electricity at the tip of the batons. I don't know how to describe it properly, but you know what I'm talking about. After this city, we were stuck at one location for more than a month. All 38 of us stayed in a storage place where the local fishermen kept their gears. The problem was that this was late in the year. We always had to go against the north wind. At this locale, the coast was very shallow, which caused high waves. If you were locals, you knew how to navigate the area safely. The warning from the locals was that we could run aground easily if we didn't know the way. We attempted to leave this place a few times, but the waves were so high that we turned back. By this time we were into the second month of the trip, and more than a month at this place. One day, the local government had enough and make us leave. They towed our boat out in deep enough water and cut the line. Even then, the waves were still very high. That was a scary day. After that, it was all smooth sailing. As the saying goes, at one place, we were given so much soft shell crabs to boil. That was a very good day. The day we arrived at the Macao territory was a beautiful day. It was beautiful in more than one way. The sea was very calm because we were surrounded by small islands. Also, at this point, we started to feel like we were almost there. It was a very foggy morning, but someone spotted a tall building on the side of a mountain. Then a very modern city appeared. We were overjoyed. In Macao, we were asked where we were heading. We said Hong Kong. They said they would help us get there. It turned out that if we said we wanted to stay in Macao, which was still a Portuguese colony at this point, things got more complicated. They might have to take us in, which they didn't want to do. After about half a day waiting, we were towed to the water border with Hong Kong. There was a Hong Kong police boat waiting for us. We got on, and the Hong Kong police towed our boat towards Hong Kong. We were put on a barge not far from the Hong Kong harbor. That was a great day. It was the 31st of December 1982. That made it a 100-day trip, right? That night, the policeman on another boat that was there to guard us put on some music. Guess what the song was? It was Happy New Year by the ABBA. Of course, we stayed on the barge for 3 days waiting to be processed. Life in the refugee camp was another story altogether. So that's it. I was lucky I stayed in Hong Kong for only a year. My uncle sponsored me over to the good old US of A. The only long-lasting effect I have is I have no desire to go on a cruise. My kids want it bad, but their papa doesn't do cruises. Wow, I can imagine the hostility when he was found out. All in favor of eating the mechanic first. I didn't have a legit job for 6 years, but I was trying to get my photography business up and running. So instead of saying I have a 6-year work gap, I just list that I was doing freelance photography during that time. In all honesty, I did do a couple weddings and stuff, but I never really charged people enough because of my lack of confidence. Manager, you have a 6-year hole in your resume. What did you do? Op, I went to Yale. Manager, okay. You're hired. Op, yay, I got a job. Edit, lost my golden virginity. That's some weapons grade comedy right there. Make sure to like and subscribe so we can watch together.